Welcome back to the Sports Source, the segment of our program brought to you by Southeast Termite and Pest Control. When you find a critter who doesn't belong in your basement or your attic or your crawl space or sitting next to you on your sofa in the living room, the folks to call are Southeast Termite and Pest Control, because they have a wildlife division that can come capture these little guys, whether that's a bat, a fox, they've actually removed foxes, skunks, rats, snakes. Call them, they come get them, they remove them, and if there's any damage done where these things got in, they repair it. And they've got photos they can show you. They do good work. You see it in their commercials as well. They do the repair work, and they can also, if you're worried that something's trying to get in, they can do work on that as well and build a barrier to prevent someone from getting into something from getting into your house. Southeast Termite and Pest Control, not just bugs. They also take care of wildlife that gets into you. Call their wildlife division or check them out online, southeasttermite.com. All right, take a look here. These are the recruiting rankings according to 24/7 Sports. Of course, that's the the Mama organization above Go Vols 24/7. So Ryan will like these rankings. Just took the top SEC teams from their top 25. Alabama number 2 in the nation. LSU number 3. Tennessee still number 6. Kind of in a tie there with Florida, who's caught up to them. And I remember people saying, well, Florida won't be able to recruit with Dan Mullen. Doing okay. My question, Ryan, I'll start with you. Tennessee was the dominant runaway leader for a long, long time, mainly because they jumped out and had so many commitments before anybody else. And since then, they've been caught up and passed a little bit, but still nothing wrong with number 6 in the nation. Where are they at the moment in terms of this recruiting class? How do things look at the moment? What's next?
It's been a slow summer because they've had 20-plus commitments for a while now. They've only gotten a couple in the last 2 months, or 2.5 months now, I guess. So things have slowed down, but they've definitely, I think, are in a good spot and in a position where they can sort of pick and choose and go after some needs and look to upgrade their class. And that's a good place to be going into the season. So that 24 commitments gives you the luxury of being pretty selective the rest of the way. On the other hand, like you said, other teams have caught up to them and passed them in some cases in the rankings because the commitment totals have leveled out a little bit more. And you still got teams behind them like Georgia laying down there with 14 commitments. You know they're going to make a run at some point. So there's still maybe other teams that can pass Tennessee. So it's still what looks like a top 10 class potentially right now, but it's got to be upgraded if you're going to have a chance to finish in that top 5, top 7 range. They've got some big names left on the board, but they've got to win some battles if they want to stay up there.
Yeah, let's put that ranking back up if we can. I'm throwing my director, the fabulous Chris Lane here, my apologies. One thing where we were expecting them to start to trading people out, if you look at the 3 stars, Tennessee still is number 1 in that group in terms of 12 3 stars, and you expected they had the numbers. How many 3 stars do you trade out for 4 and 5 stars? And that's kind of what's slowed down here. Yep. In terms of, thank you, Chris, appreciate that. In terms of visits, I mean, you're going to have games. So what's the latest on the NCAA allowing official visits?
Well, so far, the only official word is that the dead period's been extended through the end of September, so that at least that first weekend of games, we know there won't be any visits for that. Beyond that, it's still up in the air, and a lot of coaches are worried out there that there will not be any visits this fall at all. We'll see about that, but that's a real possibility, and that's going to be a hindrance. But for a team like Tennessee, if they play, that doesn't mean, in theory, that you may not be able to give out tickets, but I wonder, are recruits still going to find their way into the stands in some way for these games? Are they going to buy tickets just so they can go to games? It's the closest thing to a real visit they might get to do in that scenario. So still remains to be seen, but recruits have found their way to campuses on their own anyway, kind of taking a look around campuses on their own dime and not meeting face-to-face with coaches. I think that's going to continue as players make their decisions. So visits in an official capacity aren't maybe going to happen anytime soon, but you're still going to have some trips out there to help kids make their decisions.
Very unofficial.
Very, very unofficial. Yep.
Actually, illegal visits. Let me ask you, Josh, in terms of early signing period, it's supposed to come up in December. Like I say, there's no word on visits yet. It's hard for me to picture them being an actual early signing period this year. That said, if you're Tennessee and you've got all these eggs in the basket, you want to get them put away. Do you think there will be an early signing period? What's your guys' take on this?
Yeah, Ryan, I've been skeptical that they'll do it, but also while also pointing out, I don't know, but my guess would be go to February. That would help all the different schools, as you have some that are at least planning to play and obviously hoping that they will, and then some that are not going to be starting up until the spring semester. Again, hoping that they'll be able to do that. So I would say go to February, go to what you normally do. But what do you think?
I haven't ruled out that any change could happen this year. I mean, National Sign Day could be in May for all we know if there's a spring season for the Big Ten. They may not want to have a National Sign Day in the middle of their season if they're playing in January or February. So there's a lot that could go into that and possibly change things. But I'll say this, there's not been a big push that I've heard of so far to change the early signing period or move it back or get rid of it. So I think there's a real chance you could still have that, and especially if there are no visits this fall, and if there's no obvious chance of visits on the horizon, I think people may just say, well, what are you waiting for? You have to just go ahead and do it. So there may be an early signing period this year. You just may see fewer kids sign in December than you normally would. I think it's been 80% or so nationally, 75%. It may be a much lower percentage this year that sign early.
John, I would wonder if the teams that are playing right now would like to have the early signing period, and the teams that have 20 to 24 commits, if they would like to go ahead and have the early signing period too, and maybe they outvote the Big Ten and the Pac-12.
Yeah, that's the thing that's going to be interesting. I mean, you've got 4 major conferences that aren't playing or aren't scheduled to play. The Big Ten now, apparently they've had so much blowback that they're now looking at possibly starting right after Thanksgiving. We'll see if that happens. But you've got 4 conferences, 4 of the FBS conferences that aren't playing, 6 that are. It's, you get one more domino that falls, you got a pretty good fight over when that signing period is going to be, and that's good. That could get, there's potential for some ugliness right there.
I mean, on a lot of things, on player eligibility, on how you handle, can early enrollees play for Big Ten teams if they start their season in January or February? You could have guys getting on campus from the 2021 recruiting class and playing right away. Well, how will that be decided? There's so many issues if you have a split season essentially, and recruiting is just one of them. So the NCAA doesn't want to have to deal with that.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that one. That's a good one. I read today, we were talking about earlier. There's now talk, because I've wondered about the playoff. Because if you've got these conferences, and the conferences own and run the playoff, if you've got these conferences that aren't going to play until later, are they going to okay the playoff going on in its normal time period? Or are they going to say, whoa, we need to be in. We'll move the playoff to the spring. There's talk now of there being 2 Rose Bowls. One that takes part in the playoff in the fall, and then a second one that comes along in the spring to give the Pac-10 or the Pac-12 and the Big Ten something to play for. So, so many unanswered questions, and so many questions that aren't even thought of yet, still on the horizon. When we come back, the Big Ten, Pac-12, they are paused. How is that impacting recruiting? Is it impacting Tennessee at all? Come on back, we'll discuss it.